Hey friends, before we light the first taper, pause the scroll finger just long enough to stab that like button, tap subscribe, and drop a comment telling me what time zone you're dozing in from. Seriously, it's wild to see who's yawning with us from Kuala Lumpur at 2 a.m. or blearily sneaking a chapter on the commuter train in Toronto. Now, dim the lamps, cue the soft drone of a fan or fireplace app, and tuck the blankets around your feet. Because tonight, we're climbing stone steps into the drafty corridors of a 13th century fortress to discover why being a castle torchbearer was a job designed to ruin your spine, your lungs, and definitely your enthusiasm for medieval nightlife. The torch weighs about 5 pounds at first, nothing heroic. But after an hour, your wrist hollers. After 3, your shoulder pulses like it's being kneaded by a blacksmith's hammer. Worse, the flame shortens. The linen burns down until molten fat drips off the edge and hisses on the flagstones. That's your cue to hustle back to the brazier in the service passage and swap staves. You wish you could set the spent torch in a neat rack, but no, protocol demands it be dunked in a sand tub until dead. If sparks leap and ignite loose rushes on the floor, you'll answer to the marshal, and his lecture lasts longer than the night itself. Let's talk about those rushes. Picture a medieval floor. Not marble, not polished wood, just tamped earth or coarse planks strewn with sweet-smelling reeds mixed with dried lavender or marjoram meant to mask less pleasant aromas. They also hide lost pins, fish bones, and the occasional thumb-length beetle waiting to scuttle up your boot. One careless coal and the rushes can flare like kindling. So every torchbearer masters the art of micro-adjusting flame height. Too low, you trip in darkness. Too high, you start a fire that outshines your future unemployment. Breathing is its own ordeal. The torch's smoke is oily, thick, laced with whatever impurities lurk in cheap tallow. Imagine sniffing a bacon-scented bonfire that someone spiked with tar. After 10 minutes, your throat rasps. After 30, you cough into your sleeve so you don't wake the noble children. By dawn, your voice is a Bravil road. The chirurgeon might prescribe honey and horehound, but you're back on shift tomorrow, guaranteeing no relief. Long-term tortures develop what chroniclers call lamp blower's lung, a fancy phrase for endless bronchitis. And because you're hauling this personal chimney through narrow corridors, you absorb the stink. Your tunic ends the night reeking of smoke, mutton grease, and sweat soaked right through the wool. There's no official laundry service for torch jockeys. You rinse at the well, hang the tunic by the barracks hearth, and pray the odor fades before mold settles in. The stairs are murder. Medieval architects adored clockwise spirals. They force right-handed attackers to fight with restricted sword swings, while defenders above get roomy arcs. Clever for defense, hell for torch carriers. Each step is irregular height, some chipped, some slick with condensation. You must lead with your inner foot, press your shoulder into the central pillar, and keep the flame angled away so soot doesn't paint the ceiling. One stumble and you can tumble 20 feet, arms pinwheeling, torch trailing sparks like a comet tail. The only guardrail is your own balance. Outside the keep, the ward is black as ink. The moon hides behind toothy crenels. The only reference points are the orange pricks of fellow torchers pacing the battlements. You might be assigned gatehouse duty, standing on a platform above the drawbridge ropes. Wind claws at your cloak, trying to snuff your flame. Rain? Worse. Water hisses on the torch, sending a spray of scalding droplets into your eyes. And yet you must not let the light die. If the flame goes out, the watchtower can't relay signals, and the captain will choose new adjectives to describe your incompetence. People assume torch-bearing is solitary, but you're part of a choreography. Castle nights run on a visual relay network. One torch passes a corner, the next ignites from its sibling, so corridors stay illuminated in pulses. Drop the rhythm and servants collide, spilling chamber pots or worse, dinner platters bound for the Lord's midnight snack. If the bread ends up in the rushes speckled with soot, the kitchen mistress screams, and blame climbs the chain until it reaches you. Sleep? You'll grab scraps of it leaning against a cold wall while another lad takes a patrol loop. But real rest waits until sunrise. Even then, you don't tumble straight into straw. First, you inventory remaining torches, scrape drippings off the iron sconce brackets, and polish the brass reflectors that magnify candlelight in the chapel. By the time you crawl into the dormer loft, the sun's up and the cock's crowing like he owns the place. You stuff wax plugs in your ears, drape a cloak over your face to block the glare, and pray no one wakes you for midday mass. Payday comes quarterly, if at all. You might earn a few clipped pennies, or, more commonly, payment in kind. Rough bread, a bowl of pottage, maybe a hunk of salty cheese on holy days. Your boots wear thin from pacing, but replacing them isn't in the budget. So you patch holes with scraps of felt and keep walking. Why not quit? Because torch-bearing is an entry into castle hierarchy. Survive a year without starting a blaze or coughing up a lung, and you may graduate to porter's assistant or even a guard squire. Some torchers parlay their stairwell expertise into messenger roles. Nobody knows the castle's arteries better. Still, the attrition rate is brutal. A twisted ankle on the battlements, a tumble into the moat while crossing the dark timber bridge, or simple exhaustion, and you're replaced by the next village boy whose father can't pay taxes in grain. Worst nights? Feast days. Torches burn longer because celebrations stretch past midnight. Musicians sawing away at rebecks, knights trading boasts, servants scurrying with trenches of roast goose, all want corridors blazing. You lug double the fuel baskets, your arms wobbling from fatigue. Fire hazard triples as drunk squires stagger through halls, waving candles like victory banners. You become both illumination and fire warden, shouting, "Mind the flame, sir," at a barren son who can order you flogged. He laughs, slaps your back, and nearly knocks the torch out of your grasp. And then there's superstition. In dark corners, maids whisper that wandering souls slip through keyholes at night. Light keeps the spirits at bay, they say, so if the flame falters, a ghost might brush past. You scoff until you spend an hour alone in the crypt corridor, wind moaning through arrow slits, torch crackling like whispered words. Suddenly, the idea of an angry ancestor floating behind you seems plausible. You clench the staff tighter and add a silent prayer to Saint Elmo, patron of candle-bearers and sailors alike. Keep this wick alive. Speaking of saints, every torcher knows about Saint Blaise's Day. On February 3rd, the chaplain blesses throats with crossed candles, invoking protection from choking and cough.
You show up early, raspy voice proof that you need the blessing more than the silver-spooned pages. The priest presses wax tapers against your neck, mutters Latin, and you breathe in the scent of beeswax mid-prayer. For a moment, you believe tomorrow's smoke won't hurt as much. By nightfall, you're hacking up black phlegm again, but hope is cheap, and sometimes that's enough.
Now it's nearly dawn in our tale. You trudge to the courtyard brazier one final time. The torch is a stub. You jam it upright in the sand bucket, watch the last ember wane to gray. The sky over the eastern wall turns the color of watered wine. Somewhere a cockerel screams his inevitability. You roll your shoulders, feeling every knot. When the gates creak open for the day's merchants, you'll be invisible, just a smoke-stained shadow melting into the barracks. And that, night wanderer, is why castle torchbearers shuffled through life tired, creaky, half-blind, and perpetually scented like a barbecue gone wrong. The sun's first pale blade slices across the courtyard stones, but dawn doesn't erase the night. It only bleaches it, like scrubbing soot from a pot and finding black streaks in the corners. You shuffle toward the well, arms dangling, tunic crusted with wax freckles that will take a knife to scrape off. The cook's helpers are already lugging water buckets in a shuffling line, their eyes half shut, hair stuck to their foreheads by the steam rising off the kitchens behind them. You join the queue, not out of thirst. You've been breathing liquid smoke all night, but because well water is the only cold thing for miles, and you need to feel something brisk slap against your cheeks before sleep claims you standing up. Lean in, splash your face, and the shock zings through your jaw like a blacksmith's hammer on an anvil. Instant rejuvenation? Hardly. It's just enough to keep your legs steady for the trek to the dormer loft. Up wooden stairs that creak like gossip, down a corridor lined with straw pallets where other nightmen already snore, you collapse onto your own pad, a lumpy sack of chaff that smells faintly of mildew, and you're ready to drop. But protocol still stands, even in exhaustion's grip. You must loosen the throat ties of your soot-stiff tunic, because if the fabric dries that way, it will harden overnight and rub your neck raw on the next shift. You fumble at the knot, fingers numb, eventually give up and tear the string clean off. A tiny rebellion that will earn a scolding from the quartermaster later, but right now it feels like victory. You roll onto your side, tuck the ragged collar under your cheek, and practice the torchbearer's secret sleep. Muscles slack, mind racing just enough to tally the patrols you survived, then a plunge into blackness swift as a doused flame. You last maybe 3 hours. A trumpet blast from the outer bailey bounces off every wall till it's inside your skull. You jerk awake with a gasp, instinctively grasping for the torch that isn't there. Midday summons. The Lord has visitors, and every able body must polish something: shields, door hinges, their own manners. You drag yourself upright, dig fingernails into calves to revive circulation. Someone hands you a lump of brown bread and salted lard. It chews like rope, but at least it's calories. As you swallow, the castellan strides in, clapping his hands for attention. He's immaculate, fresh linen, a belt buckle gleaming like sunrise, beard perfumed with rosemary. He eyes the room of soot-streaked night lads and clicks his tongue. Our guests will notice if the gallery lanterns are smudged. You three, a finger spears the air straight at you. Scrub them bright and hang new wicks before dusk. A merciful job, inside, out of direct sun. Still,
Setting ladders, polishing copper bowls, replacing fragile horn panes, all with shaky arms, is a test nobody asked for. In the gallery, 20-foot ceilings loom overhead. The lanterns are iron cages, each cradling a squat candle whose grease dribbles like stalactites. You climb a splintery ladder, brace a boot on a rung that wobbles ominously, and set to work with a rag dipped in vinegar water. With every swipe, you discover new streaks of last night's smoke. Funny, you were the one making those streaks. Now you erase them. Castle life is circular toil, as eternal as the spiral stairs.
While you polish, noble chatter filters up through the acoustic funnel of the Great Hall. Rumors of a border skirmish, debate over salt tariffs, whispered betting on which visiting minstrel might disgrace himself after too much spiced wine. All of it matters somewhere, but not here on the ladder. Up here, what matters is leverage, grip, and the arithmetic of pain radiating through your shoulders. The rag turns gray, the metal begins to catch sunlight. When the steward finally inspects, he nods once. Approbation so rare among superiors that it feels like a medal. Good, you'll be on torch again tonight. We're short a man. Delightful. Afternoon drifts by in a haze of errands, carting firewood to the scullery, helping the armorer fetch water for tempering blades, lugging full chamber pots to the midden heap. Meanwhile, you count hours backward. Sunset, torch prep, first patrol, second patrol, third. Sleep will be a rumor by then. You crave a miracle. Rain big enough to flood the lower wards so badly evening patrols are canceled. Instead, the sky gleams cloudless, a blue that mocks fatigue. You've accepted the truth. There is always another night. Supper comes early from men on night watch. You slurp vegetable pottage, mostly turnip chunks floating in murky broth, and savor a slice of coarse rye dipped in drippings. Protein? Minimal. Carbs? Endless. Exactly the fuel for slow burn endurance, but none for heroics. At the bench across from you sits Tom, a torture 2 seasons ahead of you, and a cautionary tale. His cough rattles like dice in a cup. Each winter he fights fevers that leave his lips blue, yet he keeps hefting torches because his mother back home depends on his wages. He warns you between sputters, stretch your fingers every hour, smoke stiffens them, lose your grip once and you'll never forget the bruises. He lifts his sleeve to reveal a scar snaking from wrist to elbow. Torch slip, hot pitch splash. You nod, swallow thickly, resolve to strengthen your grasp on the staff tonight. Dusk. Again. The horizon bleeds orange behind crenellated silhouettes. Inside the armory annex, barrels of prepared torches stand like a grim forest. You pick one, weigh it in your palm, roll the linen head close to your ear to hear the slosh of fat inside. A full, satisfying glug. A half-dry torch burns ragged and spits. Rookie mistake. Beside you, the senior torchmaster, old Warwick, a giant with eyebrows bushy as moss, inspects each staff. He dabs pitch on frayed cloth seams, hums tunelessly. Many claim he hasn't left the castle in 30 years, knows its secret passages better than the architect who drew them. If a torchbearer disappears on shift, Warwick's the one who searches, lantern held low, muttering the missing boy's name like a spell, until he finds a collapsed form behind a buttress, or, once, floating face down in the moat. Warwick never tells tales. The castle itself keeps the ledger of casualties. The brazier flares. Warwick thrusts your torch into the coals. Flames blossom, licking high. You half wince as the heat kisses eyelashes. Then you settle the butt against your boot, angle the flame forward, and step onto the night path. Hall, corridor, stair, gallery, courtyard, battlement, and back again. The route is identical, yet no two nights share a face. Tonight the air is thick with roast boar aroma from the feast. Drunk laughter ripples through arrow loops. You glimpse silhouettes dancing around the high table dais. Each time you pass the great hall arch, you raise your flame in salute, announcing "Light and watch," hoping your voice carries pride, not fatigue. Halfway through the second circuit, excitement breaks monotony. A visiting minstrel, apparently eager to impress a scullery maid, sneaks into the lower corridor to steal a kiss. You round a corner and nearly set his feathered cap ablaze. He leaps back, eyes wide as pies, muttering apologies. The maid vanishes behind a tapestry. You exhale smoke and amusement, one of countless small scandals forever swirling under a lord's roof. Unlike you, the minstrel will sleep late tomorrow, wake with a hangover, pen a bawdy tune, and ride away. You will be back here, torch in hand, navigating the same shadows. Hour drifts into hour. The torch stub shortens. In the courtyard, you exchange it for a fresh one. A stable boy waves at you from the shadows, asks if you've seen his missing cat. It slipped through the postern gate. You shake your head, almost smile, then remember the foxes. The castle is a self-contained world, but predators sniff its edges nightly. You give the boy a sympathetic pat. Another small sorrow will join the rushes soon. Past midnight, things turn strange. Walls groan with temperature shifts. Iron hinges click as if invisible hands test them. You know most of it is contraction and expansion, but legends worm into your brain. Tower ghosts, captive souls, the hound of the battlements. You tighten fingers around the staff, reassure yourself with its warmth. Flame cannot conquer spirits, that's priest's work, but it can carve a circle of safety in the dark. You whisper the torchbearer's mantra. Light endures, night bows. It's corny. It works. During the third spiral stair climb, your knee throbs. You pause, pretend to examine the sconce while secretly stretching the joint. Old Warwick's voice echoes in memory. Never stop moving where eyes can see. Because if a guard rounds a corner and spots you idle, he assumes you're napping, and lashes follow. So you pivot, setting the torch in an iron bracket, then fake a purposeful stride back the way you came, as if checking a draft. As you pass your hidden torch again, you reclaim it smoothly, loop complete. Deception in service of duty. Somewhere after the witching hour, catastrophe almost strikes. A gust punches through an unshuttered arrow slit, catches the flame, and spews sparks onto a tapestry of St. George, skewering the dragon. You lunge, slap the embers with your bare palm, smell singed hair, but the wool threads only smolder. Heart pounding, you yank the nearest shutters closed. No one knows, but your palm is blistered. You clench teeth, continue the patrol, wondering if the angry red welt will earn sympathy or scorn. Likely neither. Torches are expected to burn. The castle demands tribute in skin. Toward false dawn, torches burn low everywhere, hallways dim to sepia. Your final duty is escorting the castle surgeon to the mews, where a prized gyrfalcon is ill. He's nervous around open flame, so you hold the torch high, away from his cage, guiding the surgeon's steps but not spooking the bird. The surgeon mutters about sour crop, sprinkles powder of ground sage into the falcon's beak. Another life saved by light, however minor. The surgeon nods thanks, slips a fig into your hand. Fresh fruit, a luxury. You pocket it, deciding to eat later when fingers aren't coated in tallow. Dawn's blade returns, gilding battlements. You plant the spent torch in the sand bucket, watch smoke coil upward and vanish. The cycle closes. You trudge toward the well, bread already waiting in the servery, bed waiting beyond. And as eyelids droop, an absurd thought floats up. Someday, maybe, you'll graduate to carrying a lantern instead of a torch. Glass shield against wind, smaller flame, less smoke. A promotion of sorts. Hope flickers. The fig you tucked into your belt pouch at dawn spends the morning ripening against your hip while the castle heaves itself awake. Sunlight slants in dusty cables through arrow slits, catching suspended motes of soot you and the others have shaken loose for months. As you stump down a corridor toward the kitchen yard, the steward's roster still ringing in your ears, you realize the place smells different in daylight. Less fearsome, more lived in. Baking bread, damp straw, a whiff of horse sweat drifting from the stables. Even the chill of stone walls feels kinder when torches aren't pawing at the air for oxygen. By the well, a cooper is knocking iron hoops onto a barrel. Clang! 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 Each hammer strike ricochets off archways until the entire ward feels like a drum. You're supposed to fetch kindling from the woodshed, but the cooper pauses mid-swing, squints at you, and crooks a finger. Turns out his apprentice slipped while resting a stave into position and split his cheek on the rim. The lad's inside the shed, dazed but conscious. The cooper needs an extra pair of hands, yours, to brace the barrel while he finishes. Torch-bearing didn't prepare you for barrel science, but you learned early in castle life that refusing a neighbor's request is a shortcut to isolation, so you nod and drop your bundle of kindling. 10 minutes later, you're gripping a smooth oak rim, pressing down hard while the cooper on the other side pounds the last hoop tight. Sweat beads on your nose. The mid-morning sun is hotter than last night's torches ever felt. Task done, he thanks you with a conspiratorial wink and passes over a sawed-off wedge of spalted beech, prime material for fire starters. Carve it thin later, he advises, catches faster than kindling. Little gestures like that mean everything when your world is confined to curtain walls. You're learning the social mortar that holds stones together. Today's favor is tomorrow's rescue. Kindling duty resumes, then you deliver bundles to each hearth. Kitchen, armory forge, lady's solar brazier. At the last stop, the lady's maid catches you staring at a tapestry depicting the martyrdom of St. Lawrence. She mistakes fascination for devotion, presses a hazelnut cake into your hand, whispers, "Pray for me." You nod, unsure what prayer she needs. The castle is layered in secrets you haven't mapped yet. When the sun arcs high, you retreat to the barracks loft for sanctioned rest. Officially, torchmen earn the siesta hour. Unofficially, interruptions arrive like uninvited pigeons. You've just kicked off boots when Kevin, rat catcher by trade, part-time gossip broker, clambers up the ladder hatch. He's carrying a burlap sack that thumps on the planks. "Need light after vespers," he pants.
Kitchen swears rats have breached the salt fish barrels. Marshall wants 'em flushed tonight. You groan, another detour before patrol. But Kevin presses a thin silver half-groat into your palm. Hazard pay. In his calculus, a torch is both spotlight and intimidator. Cornered rats fear flame more than dogs. You weigh the coin, think of the blister on your palm. Accept.
Afternoon drizzles past in fragments of shallow sleep. Only when a bell clonks for terce do you jerk awake, uncertain which clock of the mind struck. Your dreams were a rolling reel of stairs, torches, barrels, rats squealing in shadow. No matter, you swing legs overside, stuff swollen feet back into cracked leather boots, and shuffle to the chapel for mandatory prayers. 30 minutes of Latin mumbling while sunshafts paint colored stripes through stained glass across the polished floor. You keenly feel how still the air is, how fragrance of beeswax candles seems almost delicate compared with the animal stench of night shifts. The monk leading chant drones a psalm about watchfulness, and you can't help but smirk at the irony. Few men alive have watched more dark corridors than a torchbearer. After prayers, Kevin meets you in the larder tunnel. He's armed with a hooked staff and a burlap sheath you suspect hides a ferret. You carry your own arsenal: 2 fresh torches, a flint striker, and the Cooper's beach wedge shaved into slivers. The larder tunnel is low, ceiling pegged by raw timber beams, odor equal parts smoked meat and rancid brine. Rats scuttle at your approach, claws ticking on stone. You strike flint, catch sparks on the wedge, coax a timid flame until it jumps to the torch head. Heat rushes upward, casting warped shadows against the barrel rows. Kevin thrusts his staff into a hole and upends 2 startled rodents tangling in the air. They land squeaking near your boots. Instinctively, you raise the torch. The rats wheel, scatter, vanish into another crevice. 3 more times you repeat the ritual until silence reigns. Kevin nods, wipes sweat with his sleeve, claps your shoulder. After he's gone, you linger, listening to the faint crackle of fat in the torch linen, aware you've just spent precious shoulder strength hours before night duty. But the half-groat in your pouch is real, and maybe it buys an extra fig tomorrow.
Supper tonight is boiled peas and rye again. But tonight you sit with Tom the veteran, Warwick the torchmaster, and an old archer named Edric, whose left hand trembles since a siege wound years back. Conversation drifts to rumors: highwaymen prowling the eastern forest lanes, the king planning a levy for new wars, and a comet sighted over coastal towns, a fiery omen sure to stoke fears among peasants. You remark that torches have taught you comets and sparks share a scent. They chuckle politely, though you suspect the metaphor fails. Dusk slides in with merciful clouds, promising a milder patrol. You prep linen, check tallow pots, test shafts for cracks. The fresh torch in your hand this night feels marginally lighter. Maybe your muscles acclimate, maybe hope bends perception. Either way, you stride into hallways dimming to gray. The first circuit is routine. At the oratory, you pause. A scribe still copying manuscripts asks you to hold steady so he can seal a wax stamp by torchlight. You grant him 5 breaths. Melted wax plinks onto parchment, hardens. He bows thanks, and you move on. Near the kitchens, a scullery lad slips on a grease patch, crashes into a stack of pewter mugs. Clang! Echo swallows him. You whirl, thrust your torch forward, its glow revealing a spread of turbid goo across the flagstones. Together you shuffle broken mugs aside, mop with old linen, avert a bigger accident. Some would call it menial. You call it fire prevention. Every spilled, fat-stricken rag is potential tinder come midnight.
Second Circuit. Outside, on the wall walk, clouds break. A fat moon peers out, washing merlons in silver. Your torch becomes less guide, more companion. You pause midway along the parapet, hold the flame high, letting moon and fire halos mingle. It's oddly beautiful. Two lights in rivalry, one cold, one scorching. Moment of reflection ends when the watch captain roars for report. You answer, voice catching. Smoke again.
Inside, the minstrel from last night is in the alcove tuning his lute, planning a dawn serenade for the lady. He catches sight of you, grins sheepishly, offers a flask of watered wine. Against wisdom you sip, feel warmth slide to stomach, promise of temporary moisture to fight torch dryness. He confesses the maid vanished, maybe torches scared her. You assure him maids vanish for many reasons, torches rank low. He laughs, plucks a chord that sounds like a sigh, then disappears into tapestries, chasing romance.
Third Circuit. Stormfront arrives unexpected. Wind barges through a crenel without knocking, yanking flames sideways. You dodge sparks. Some drift toward a tapestry but fizzle mid-air. Still, jolt of adrenaline spikes your heart. Worse, that wind brings distant cheering. You strain ears. Not cheering, chanting. Warwick appears at stairtop, bearded face grave. Scouts on outer fields spotted torch clusters, armed riders camping too close. Possible raiding party by dawn, which means tonight's torches matter double. Signal lines must remain bright for messengers. Orders cascade. Double patrols, no laps. Flame must be visible from courtyard to outer wall at all times. You and Tom pair up, each taking half the keep's interior. Warwick supplies extra staves, heavier with resin. They burn hotter, smoke denser. By hourglass estimate, Dawn sits 4, maybe 5 fights away. Shoulders protest, lungs flare raw, but fear sharpens focus better than rest ever could.
Down in the gatehouse, you pass the blacksmith's apprentice distributing sand buckets for quick dousing. He winks. If raiders breach, pour pitch, light it. Won't be the first torch you throw tonight. The gallows humor lands because you've secretly wondered how satisfying it would be to lob flaming justice instead of merely escorting it.
During a break, if leaning against a bow window for 50 heartbeats counts, you finally devour the hazelnut cake. Sweet, honey sticky, it dissolves on your tongue like a story of somewhere kinder. Sugar rush revives sagging knees. You resolve to thank the maid if you survive. Fourth Circuit blurs. Smoke stings eyes. Tears stream unchecked. The castle interior flickers between torch glow and lightning from clouds now rolling overhead. Thunder growls. You think of the Omen comet. Decide even comets wouldn't dare this sky. In the pantry corridor, you encounter a page trembling. He must deliver fresh linens to the Lord, but fears the dark. You shepherd him with torch overhead, his small hand clutching your sleeve. When he reaches solar door, he mouths silent gratitude, dashes in. You breathe, almost smile, slip back into gloom. Approaching false dawn, you hear horns, not castle horns, distant, fading. The raiding party perhaps deciding against assault in rain-slick darkness. Relief tingles, but discipline keeps you pacing. At last, horizon pales. Your torch gutters low, but clings to duty till the end. Warwick summons all torchbearers to Central Court. We form ragged line, linen stubs hissing in sand as we extinguish them. Water drips from our hair. Rain did come, soft, then driving. Warwick speaks quietly. No breach, but new shift of guards will scour fields at sunrise. He thanks us, rare, weighty. Everyone stands taller by a notch. You trudge to barracks, soaked, smoke-saturated, tingling with leftover fear. Tom claps your back, coughs weakly, mutters, "Not dead. Good shift." In the loft, you peel off tunic heavy with rain and pitch, lay it near fireplace. The blister on your palm has burst, leaving a raw crescent. You smear it with lard from kitchen scrap, bandage with linen strip, flop onto pallet. Before sleep swallows you, you recall moon and torch halos merging over the battlements. Proof that even in siege, rumors, and storm gusts, light finds partnership. You close eyes, dream not of torches, but of lanterns with glass walls. You're awake again before the bell, muscles buzzing with that half-bright ache that means your body never really powered down. The barracks smells of wet wool and scorched linen, last night's storm having seeped into every seam. Across the loft, Tom, the veteran, snores like a broken bellows. But Warwick is already on his feet, whittling splints for fresh torch cores and humming a tune only people who've survived too many sieges seem to know. No one speaks. Dawn feels brittle, as if a loud word could shatter the castle's fragile relief that the raiders kept their distance. You slide into yesterday's tunic, now stiff with dried rain, then snatch the beach kindling the cooper gifted. Down the ladder, into the inner yard, you catch the kitchen chimney coughing out its first thread of smoke. It curls lazily, like the castle exhaling. The cook's boy waves you over with a ladle, digs into a cauldron of barley porridge flecked with chopped nettles. Torchman needs fuel, he jokes, dumping an extra spoonful into your bowl, else he burns instead of the wick. You gulp it down standing, warmth hitting stomach like sunrise. Across the yard, the armorer bangs a dent out of a breastplate. The clang rings clearer than the chapel bell. Today's main order comes on a wax tablet delivered by a panting page. The Great Hall must be lit for an afternoon council, meaning every sconce, bracket, and chandelier chain has to be checked, cleaned, and fed with new torches by noon. You and 3 others form up under Warwick's steely gaze and march toward the torch house, a squat stone annex that could be mistaken for a crypt if not for the perpetual odor of pitch. Inside, casks of fat, bundles of linen, and stacks of seasoned ash poles are arranged in saintly rows. Warwick hands you a bundle of rags soaked overnight in tallow and tells you to start winding. Torch winding is its own meditation. You anchor the linen at the pole's tip, then spiral downward in tight, overlapping loops, each tensioned just enough to stay firm but loose enough to absorb fuel. By the 3rd pole, your palms burn, but you settle into a rhythm. Wind, tuck, knot. Dip the head in liquefied pitch, hold it aloft until viscous rivulets stop dripping. The room grows heady with tar fumes and candle heat. Sweat beads under your coif, stings your eyes. One of the lads jokes the smell would kill perfume in a mile's radius. Another mutters that he prefers pitch stench to battlefield gore. Consensus: both ruin appetite. Once 40 torches harden, you shoulder 8 apiece and shuffle into the great hall. High windows throw latticed light onto flagstones, but the rafters, lofted like an upturned ship, are still shadow-soaked. You climb a wooden catwalk along the north wall, slotting torches into iron jaws nailed to beams. Below, servants polish trestle tables and hang tapestries depicting saints skewering dragons. You wonder briefly if the dragons cried smoke like your torches. File the thought away for future midnight musings. Mid-morning delivers a new complication. The almoner decides to distribute bread to beggars at the postern gate, meaning the gate passage, too, must be lit so rumor can't accuse the castle of handing out charity in darkness. You and Tom haul 6 fresh staves across the yard, past the well where a falconer's apprentice coaxes a hooded bird onto his wrist. The hawk swivels its head at your nodding torch bundle as if weighing prey. You grin, salute it with the torch tips. A feather falls like a burnt petal. At the postern, you pass the beggars, a crooked line of pilgrims, widows, and war-maimed men, each staring with that mix of gratitude and shame only the hungry know. As you mount porches into wall slots, you overhear their whispered tales. One lost a son to fever. Another saw the comet and mistook it for an angel's sword. A third claims the raiders last night were demons scouting souls. You secure the last sconce, strike flint, and ignite a slow yellow tongue. Light flares across faces lined like parched parchment. For a heartbeat, every pupil widens, soaking in brightness, and you feel oddly priestly, dispensing a different sacrament. Back in the yard, the clouds have thinned. Sun hammers the slate roofs, coaxing a whetstone reek from them. Noon bell tolls. The council has begun. You're dismissed until prime, which translates to an hour of unsupervised life, an unimaginable luxury. You wander toward the outer wall walk where breeze cools sweat. Leaning on the parapet, you watch fields ripple green, raider-free for now. A flock of jackdaws wheels overhead, black quills flashing. You envy them their light bones. Footsteps behind. The minstrel appears, lute slung, eyes red-rimmed. He confides the lady rejected his dawn serenade. Her brother, a hot-blooded knight, threatened to turn his bowels into harp strings. He plans to ride for the next market town tonight. He presses a tiny glass phial into your hand, rose water laced with clove, to cut the torch smell when you woo someone. You laugh, the notion of wooing through soot-choked breath absurd, but tuck it away. Bartering is survival. You might trade fragrance for favor someday. Prime Bell drags you off the wall and back toward duty. Warwick wants an inventory of spent torches, charred stumps to be stripped and rebundled later. You descend to the ash pit behind the kitchens, a hollow where last night's furnace of stubs smolders. The pitmaster, an old woman with arms like rope, nods at a wheelbarrow. Together, you pry loose blackened poles, dump piles of gray ash that poof up in soft clouds, coating your beard, your eyebrows, your eyelashes until you look like winter's first victim. The heat rising from the pile is strange, ghost warmth without flame, like anger that's already spoken its harshest words, yet still lingers. Mid-afternoon, thunder mutters on horizon. You're called to the eastern stair tower. One of the banners must be replaced before evening. They want the new colors lit, floating in dusk light. The stair tower is tight, spiraling clockwise, so defenders above have more sword room. You ascend torch first, free hand clutching the banner's rolled silk. Each step is uneven by design. Tumble hazard for invaders becomes ankle torture for torchmen. Halfway up, you slip. Hot tar flecks drop on your wrist, leaving pepper burns. You hiss, steady, climb on. At the top, wind hulks against the crenels. You wedge the torch into a fight hole, unroll the banner. Crimson silk snaps like a sail, golden lion embroidered mid-pounce. Once tied, you step back and admire how flame eddies make the beast seem alive. You hope the Lord notices. More likely, the banner will claim its glory alone. Evening inches near. Supper again, peas and rye, but tonight spiced with a scrap of bacon rescued from kitchen offcuts. You eat beside the archer Edric, who tells you of a siege 20 years ago where the enemy tossed plague corpses over walls. Torchbearers burned the bodies at night, smoke black as morning veils. You ask if he's scared of tonight. He shrugs. Scared, bored, same coin, different faces. You pocket the aphorism. Night shift assembles under a sky mottled purple. Warwick speaks of rumors, raiders gone, but a royal envoy due at dawn. We must keep corridors bright for noble boots. Plus, the comet may flare again, omen or not. Anyone glimpsing it inside the keep should see it framed by trustworthy flame. You take your assigned arc, chapel cloister, herb garden, infirmary wing, then down to the oubliette where prisoners brood. Most torchmen hate that loop, too many shadows in corners where chains once clinked, but you accept. Variety is fuel for wakefulness. First pass through cloister, monks chanting compline echo. Your torch reflects off damp paving stones in rhythmic flashes. Past the herb beds, you pause near sage bushes bruised from rain. Inhale their resinous scent, half-masking torch pitch. Infirmary wing is quieter. Only one patient snores, leg splinted after dropping a flagstone on himself. Nurse asks for extra light to cleanse a wound. You oblige, gripping torch high while she pours wine over a gash. The patient screams, flame flickers, making walls dance. You swallow bile, but stay steady. Oubliette stairs plunge into earth. Cold breath wafts up. You descend, torch crackling louder in the hush. At the bottom, a single cell holds a pickpocket awaiting trial. He sits cross-legged, eyes reflecting flame. He asks the hour. You tell him roughly. He murmurs a thank you, as though time is water. Then he confesses he once worked as a lamplighter in the city, your cousin trade. You ask advice. He smiles. Keep flame small when wind's high. Big fire dies faster. You nod. Prison wisdom surprises. Back topside. Moon emerges, huge and orange. Clouds part to reveal the comet. There, indeed, a faint ember tailing across stars. You raise torch toward it instinctively, as if two fires might greet. Something about the moment roots you. Alone on the rampart, cosmic flame above, mortal flame in hand. For a breath, everything feels connected by heat, from sun to star to torch to candle stub in some distant peasant hut. Your final circuit nears pre-dawn. Fatigue drops like a cloak soaked in lead. Shoulders quake, eyelids grit up. But the torch in your hand sizzles merrily. New recipe, extra resin, and its steady hiss is a lullaby in reverse, keeping you upright. You think of the rosewater phial and dab a drop under your nose. Floral spice cuts through pitch, clears sinuses, jolts brain. You silently bless the heartbroken minstrel. At dawn, the royal envoy's trumpets squawk outside the gate. Torches still blaze along corridors, framing his retinue in theatrical gold as they step inside. Courtiers whisper approval of the keep's vigilance. You, half invisible behind a pillar, watch pride bloom on Warwick's face. He gives you a rare thumb up. Shift over. Torches quenched, you shuffle to loft. Before sleep, you scribble in charcoal on a scrap of parchment, your first torchbearer chronicle, about comets and prison lamplighters and sage-scented breezes. Maybe someday someone will read and understand that carrying fire through darkness is equal parts burden and art. The banquet orders arrive like thunderclaps in quick succession. 3 additional braziers in the marble antechamber. Every wall torch in the guest apartments doubled. And, because the envoy's astrologer insists, a ring of perpetual flame around the courtyard fountain to guard against baleful constellations. You barely finish gulping yesterday's stale bread when Warwick presses a wax-sealed list into your palm and growls, "We light the castle like a midsummer bonfire, or we all roast on spits for the steward." Noon sun beats hard enough to warp shadows as you and Tom drag a handcart stacked with fresh poles toward the armory arch. A gaggle of squires rush by, lugging polished helms that wink sparks of light into your eyes. One catches your elbow, breathless. "Sir Ernod dropped his helmet visor, wants an emergency polish and torchlight. Be quick!" He darts away before you can answer. You chuckle. Knights love gleam more than victory these days. Inside the armory, you find the brazier frames. Iron rings the height of your hip, nasty with spider webs. A smith's apprentice loans you a rasp to scrape away rust. Every scratch sprays orange dust that clings to sweat, leaving your arms speckled like fox fur. When you finish, the apprentice lad winks. "Torchbearers make the best fireworks," he says, striking flint at your shoulder so sparks fizz between you. You cough out a laugh, wave away cinders, and roll the braziers toward the antechamber. The envoy's guard captain, a lean woman whose armor smells of oiled leather and cold wind, intercepts you at the threshold. She insists on inspecting every wick. You stand there while she sniffs each torch head, evaluates the pitch mix, even presses thumb against the linen wraps to test spring. Only when satisfied does she step aside. Her eyes, gray as February, linger on yours for a heartbeat. Approval or warning? Hard to tell. By mid-afternoon, the antechamber pulses with heat. Braziers roar, torches flare along mirrored shields, and silk banners droop under rising currents. Courtiers fan themselves with parchment maps that curl at the edges. Sweat forms jeweled rivers down powdered necks. The envoy glides in wearing violet robes and an expression that says the temperature is everyone else's fault. You fade into the shadow behind a pillar, but not fast enough. A herald beckons you forward to reignite a sputtering wall torch beside the envoy's personal scribe. You spark flint, coax flame, and bow away, catching a whiff of the envoy's perfume. Cinnamon and something darker, almost metallic, before retreating. Task complete? Not yet. Warwick motions you to follow him down a cramped spiral stair seldom used, the postern catwalk tunnel that threads beneath the kitchens. "The fountain ring," he mutters. "Steward wants it lit before moonrise." You squeeze after him into a passage barely broader than your shoulders, torch thrust ahead like a probing tongue. The stone walls are slick with years of condensed cook steam. Fat from roasting pigs has bled through mortar, leaving a waxy sheen that reflects flame in warped streaks. Your boots slurp against greasy puddles. Halfway through, Warwick stops at a vent hole and breathes in smoky kitchen air. "If this place ever catches," he says, tapping the torch head, "Castle becomes a candle." You both move faster after that. Emerging into the courtyard, you discover the fountain drained, basin lined with polished river stones. Masons' apprentices hustle to position copper bowls along the rim, 24 in all, each already half filled with lamp oil mixed with salt to tint flame green. The astrologer stands nearby, wearing a hood spangled with star patterns, reciting planetary hours in a low drone. You think he looks like a child's drawing of the night sky come to life. Lighting the bowls becomes a dance. You kneel, touch torch tip to oil, leap aside before fire whooshes up your sleeve. Each ignition releases a different scent: rosemary, lavender, frankincense. Herbs sprinkled atop the fuel by the castle herbalist to sweeten the omen. Soon emerald tongues flicker in a perfect circle, reflected in the fountain's trickle that resumes once a steward pulls a sluice. Water flashes green gold under rippling light. The astrologer claps softly, voice tremoring with satisfaction. You risk a private grin. For once, your craft seems almost elegant. Dusk descends like a silk veil. You grab supper in the yard, oatcakes and a wedge of hard cheese, and watch fireflies mimic your torches amid the hedges. The envoy's musician begins to tune a lute on the balcony. For a fleeting moment, castle life feels festive rather than fraught. Then the storm horns bellow on the outer wall. Raiders? No. Scouts report merely a roving thunderhead rolling in from the western moors. But storm or siege, open flames can't falter. Warwick orders the night crew, double strength, into action. "Rain will drown everything unless we shield the lips," he says. Shields, in Torchman language, are conical iron caps we clamp over torch heads, leaving narrow vents. They keep rain from soaking wicks, but starve flame if not adjusted right. You sling a satchel of caps and sprint the gallery route: chapel, library, guest wing. In the library, you slow, mindful of ancient parchment scrolls that would ignite like birch bark. Shelves tower like sleeping giants. Flame halos illuminate titles: Lives of the Desert Fathers, Herbal of St. Modwina, Chronicle of the Lunar Tides. You tiptoe between reading desks, fitting caps. A young clerk pops up from behind a stack, quill in hair. "Mind the draft," she whispers, gesturing to a cracked window pane. You nod, slide it shut. The clerk's eyes widen at the sudden hush, as though silence itself were precious. You back away, torch reflected in her ink bottle like a miniature sun. Outside, first drops splatter on tabard cloth. The storm arrives not with lightning, but with a patient, soaking rain, the kind that finds skin through any seam. Capped torches hiss, but hold. You breathe relief. Midnight nears. Warwick assigns you to the battlements above the envoy's chambers. The Ghost Walk, so named because centuries claim footsteps echo twice, once for the living, once for the dead. Wind drives rain sideways. You lean into it, torch angled, shield rattling. The world narrows to flame and water and stone. Somewhere below, revelry continues, a lute strum, a cheer. But up here, only the squalls roar and your heart's thick thud. A flash, not lightning, but gleam of steel. You startle, swing torch, and reveal the guard captain huddled under a cloak, scanning the dark beyond the walls. "Relax," she says, lowering her hood. "I watch the clouds, not you." She explains that some raiders time attacks with storms. You chat between gusts. She confesses admiration for torchmen. You stand still while the world crashes and asks your name. When you tell her, she smiles like that's a puzzle piece found. She moves on. You check the torch, still strong, though tar runs in molten rivulets down the stave. Your gloved hand feels the heat bleeding through. You adjust grip. Remember the prisoner's advice. Small flame in wind. You loosen the shield vents. Flame dims slightly. Steadies. Good. Hours drip like wax. Rain slackens. Castle below exudes damp wood, boiled wine, and that faint pitch perfume that now seems part of your own sweat. You're nodding when the gate warder below calls, "Oil flash!" A courier arrives with word. A bridge washed out south of here. Envoy must delay departure. More nights of torch duty ahead. Part of you groans. Part welcomes the certainty. Another day of purpose, a fire to keep and corridors to tame. Dawn again. You extinguish the battlement torch by pressing the shield over it. Starve it until it coughs smoke and dies. The sky washes pale rose. Birds erupt from the weather vane in frantic harmony. You descend, muscles jelly, yet inside a small ember of pride glows. Another night carried, no flame failed. Back in the barracks loft, you unsling damp gear, collapse onto straw. The others mumble tactics for drying boots, swapping tales of sparks that branded tunics. You close eyes, but before sleep steals sense, you remember to tell future you, "Mix pine resin tomorrow, it burns brighter in mist." And maybe find the clerk again, return her ink bottle's sun. Sun slants through the battered shutters of the loft and slices your dreams into bright ribbons of reality. Feet thump on floorboards overhead. Someone's already late for kitchen duty. And the straw under your shoulder crackles like a tiny bonfire. You fight the impulse to bury yourself deeper. Time, flame, and noble expectation wait for no torchbearer. Down in the yard, the storm has washed every surface clean, but left puddles that mirror the castle's towers upside down. You splash through them toward Warwick, who stands beside a cart piled high with resin buckets, linen rolls, and fresh pitchwood logs. Without looking up, he growls, "We double-prime the eastern galleries. Envoy's party won't watch their steps, so they're light better." He thrusts a steaming clay mug toward you, thin ale, already lukewarm, and jerks his head to the ramp. Breakfast on the go. As you guide the cart up the incline, you pass ranks of bleary guards exchanging night for day shifts. Their helmets drip from the storm. Their eyes drip from exhaustion. One nods in gratitude as your torch passes. Your light lets him unbuckle chin straps without fumbling. Not for the first time, you realize that you illuminate moments you'll never be thanked for. That's the work, carving clarity out of darkness,
unseen in the very act of being seen. Inside the eastern gallery, you and Tom divide tasks. He sands soot-scorched sconces, while you unspool fresh linen wicks, dipping them into a cauldron of molten pitch and pine resin. The mixture glows amber like trapped sunlight. It smells of campfires and sticky sap. Steam wafts up, curling around the gallery's stained glass windows, where saints in sapphire robes seem to watch with disapproval. Too much worldliness in your grubby work. But without you, the saints would vanish into night. Strange comfort.
Between dips, Tom mutters gossip. The astrologer claims the envoy's fate depends on a comet expected tonight. The steward swears the comet's tail must be greeted with uninterrupted flame, or treaties will fail. You roll your eyes, yet tally wicks accordingly. Superstition pays your wages.
Mid-morning, a page arrives, panting. Chandler needs you in the great hall. The wax chandeliers leaned during the storm. You wipe resin strings from your fingers and hurry down. In the hall, a forest of ladders has erupted beneath 4 massive circlets of candles that drift askew like drunken halos. The chandler, hair dusted in beeswax flakes, waves you up a ladder. Your job, stabilize each bracket with tiny wedges, but do not drip soot onto the linen tablecloths already spread for noon feast. Easier to juggle fire than avoid a noblewoman's scrutiny. Halfway up, you discover the real danger. Candle stubs fuse together from last night's heat, forming irregular clusters that could drop molten locks on the envoys below. You unclasp a knife and begin separating them, your torch wedged in an iron lip nearby. Every flick of the blade sends sparks. Every spark makes you imagine wax waterfalls of doom. At last, the chandler gives a satisfied grunt. "If anyone winds up speckled in wax, I'll blame the pitch monkeys," he jokes. You grin. Jest is survival.
Noon bells echo. You half run to the kitchen service door, where Warwick waits with a trio of fresh recruits. New boys stiff with nerves, clutching torches like unfamiliar swords. Warwick signals you closer. You'll lead them on cellar patrol tonight. Rumor of rat-gnawed wick barrels. Cellar duty. Tunnels, mildew, blind corners, and echoes that magnify the smallest squeak into phantom armies. You swallow unease, but nod. Afternoon chores blur. Refilling oil flasks, teaching a recruit the quick-strike flint method. Strike upward, sparks shower away from bare feet. Delivering extra lamp glass to the scribes who complain the storm's humidity fogged their lamps. In the scriptorium, you glimpse the clerk from yesterday, now perched on a stool copying a treaty draft. She lifts her eyes, mouths "thank you" as your lamp clears her parchment's shadow. Between heartbeats, you imagine offering her a tour of hidden passages by torchlight, but reality yanks you on. Warwick's whistle echoes down the corridor. Twilight descends, thick and violet. You and the cellar squad light starter torches, shorter, fatter, designed to gutter less in damp air, and head through an oak door behind the buttery. The stair spirals down, stone slick with condensation. Each step releases a cold breath, smelling of old wine and older secrets. At the foot lies the barrel room. Rows of casks, baskets of root vegetables, crates of salted fish. Torches reveal rat droppings near the wick baskets. Rumor confirmed. You split the lads. 2 patrol the perimeter with clubs to scare rodents. 1 assists you inspecting baskets. You tug out lengths of linen soaked in pitch. Some are gnawed, teeth marks tiny yet deep. One spark into those frayed fibers and an ember could burrow, smolder unseen, ignite the whole store. You order the ruined lots removed. As the recruits carry them upstairs, a tiny squeal sounds from behind a flour bag. You flick torchlight, eyes glint back. A rat, bold as a baron, darts forward and nips your ankle through boot leather. Pain flares. Instinct swings torch, flame whooshes, rat disappears. You laugh through the sting, initiation bite. Inspection finished. You station a lantern on a hook and lead recruits through the black wine vault. There, humidity slicks the arches and droplets fall in rhythmic plinks. You demonstrate how to shelter flame inside cloak folds when drafts swirl. One recruit trembles so hard his torch jitters like a comet. You steady his wrist. Breath slow, flame follows lungs. He inhales, steadies. His gratitude glows brighter than the wick. When you emerge, night has fully claimed the courtyard. Above, clouds part to reveal the comet. Pale green streak bleeding across the stars. Gasps rise from nobles on balconies. The astrologer spins beneath the fountain's ring of emerald fire. Arms wide, robes billowing like a summoned ghost. Good omen or doom? You care only that your torches reflect in every awestruck eye. Dinner service begins. Torchmen line the hall, dipped staves lighting platters of roast capon, almond milk tarts, and glittering jugs of spiced wine. While nobles toast celestial portents, you toe the edge of a tapestry niche where Warwick joins you. He hands a damp cloth. "For the rat's mark," he says. You nod, wipe ankle. "Watch the envoy's guard tonight," Warwick adds softly. "Rumor she expects an assassin inside the crowd." Assassin? Suddenly every shadowed corner throbs with possibility. Torchbearers become guardians. Your flame the only barrier between feast and chaos. You scan faces. Lute players' fingers quiver. Cupbearers' gaze too sharp. Your torchlight skates across silverware, seeking steel reflections that shouldn't be there. Mid-banquet, a servant collapses, clutching chest. Panic stirs, but the envoy's guard captain strides forward, sniffs the fallen man's goblet, nods. No poison, just exhaustion, and waves for space. Torches flare taller, as if exhaling relief. Yet tension lingers like a hidden draft. At last, trumpets sound, curfew. Nobles disperse, torches escort them down corridors. You're assigned to accompany the envoy's scribe back to guest quarters. To your surprise, the scribe is the clerk, ink-stained fingers, calm eyes. She walks beside you, manuscript tucked under arm. The comet's pale glow filters through arrow slits, mingling with your flame. She breaks silence. "When terrified of ink blotting, I imagine your torch chasing darkness off the page." You chuckle, confess you often read shadows like stories. At her door, she presses a small scroll into your hand, blank but for a single ink star. "For light," she says, closing the latch. The comet slides west. Torch crews gather equipment, extinguish excess flames, leave only watch lamps. You limp to barracks, ankle throbbing. Sleep hovers, but Warwick shakes your shoulder. Final perimeter with him and the guard captain. Duty never sleeps. Together, you patrol battlements. The captain measures each quadrant, notes torch spacing. She pauses where your earlier torch once burned, now replaced by a smaller lamp. "Your mark," she says softly, "flame held through storm, commendable." Her voice, usually iron, now silk. She hands you a small vial of balm, for bites, rat or otherwise. You stutter thanks. Dawn, too, blushes. The comet fades. Castle still stands, treaty unbroken, fires unquenched. You finish the round, log torch counts in Warwick's ledger, burn rate, resin quality, wick losses, and sign your name with ink that smells faintly of that clerk's star. You collapse on straw, dreams rushing in like tide, carrying comet tails, green fire, and a guard captain's steel soft smile. Tomorrow night, more flame to shepherd, but now, rest. You wake before the bells, jostled from another shallow doze by that familiar, resin-scented itch at the back of your throat. The loft is black as spilled ink, yet every torchbearer's body somehow knows when the night is about to turn. Instinct, more than schedule, hauls you upright, and the straw gives its dry sigh of resignation. One last crackle before the shift to end all shifts. Tonight isn't routine. Tonight is Coronation Eve. Somewhere beyond the curtain of sleep-heavy stone, masons are hanging fresh banners, stewards counting goblets, and the kitchens are already coughing wood smoke up every vent. But your world is narrower. 31 corridors, 12 stairwells, 4 courtyards, and a single, very flammable baldachin platform on which the new king must appear at dawn without looking like a shadow puppet. That means light, steady, windproof, panic-proof light, everywhere His Majesty's eyes can drift. Warwick greets you in the yard. His beard is frosted with ash, making him look equal parts blacksmith and ghost. He has the ledger under one arm and a roll of parchment under the other. "We script the flame dance," he rasps without preamble. "Memorize the order. Gatehouse first, then ramp walk, then choir loft. Skip nothing. Lapse, and the crown procession trips over its own shoes." He hands you a tin flask of water, real water, not small beer. That's when you know how serious the night will be. Nobody wastes clean water on torch monkeys except in crisis. You drink, the coolness biting exhausted gums, and pass the flask to the recruit with the tremor. He manages 2 gulps before spilling a third down his jerkin. "Hold it like a torch, lad," Warwick snaps, though his tone is oddly gentle. The arsenal looks like a ship's hold flipped inside out. Bundles of birch, cedar, and pitchwood are sorted by burn time, each bound with dyed twine so you can identify them by lantern glow alone. Red for 60-minute beams, yellow for 30, blue for shock-burst flare wands that spit sparks in emergencies. Tonight, you draft 20 reds, 40 yellows, and 5 blues, plus the ceremonial dragonmouth torch, whose carved iron head will lead the crown procession. You heft that dragonmouth last. It's heavier than any practical torch, its snout packed with resin cubes the size of dice, each cube steeped in camphor and rosemary. When lit, it roars a fragrant column 3 feet long and crackles like distant thunder. Impressive, but a nightmare if the bearer wobbles. Guess who's been volunteered to carry it? Mid-evening checklists blur into each other. Confirm that every sconce screw is snug, every cresset chain unkinked, every oil basin topped. Somewhere between the gatehouse and ramp walk, you spy the clerk again, now sporting a sleepless smile and 3 fresh ink blots on her cuff. She passes you with a conspiratorial grin and murmurs, "Ink star still shining?" You tap your jerkin pocket where it rides. Tiny superstitions become fortresses the closer you get to dawn. A horn blast echoes from the outer wall. Visiting nobles arrive earlier than expected. You sprint to light the avenue braziers, shallow iron bowls waist-high along the approach, each demanding a coal transfer by hand. Sparks leap at your face, singe eyebrow tips, pepper sleeves with pinholes. When you finish, the ramp resembles a molten necklace, and the nobles' coach wheels glitter as they creak across cobbles. One lady leans out to praise the vista. Her perfumed breath mixes with pine smoke, a scent halfway between courtly and campfire. Back inside, Warwick orders last meal. In the scullery, you scarf rye heel drenched in onion broth. It's hot enough to scald, but you welcome the pain. Keeps eyelids from sliding shut. The recruit across from you fidgets, twisting torch strap until it frays. You lay a hand on his wrist. Flame follows lungs, you remind him. He inhales, shoulders drop, strap relaxes. 11th bell. Cellar patrol, your old nemesis. One final sweep for smolder. Surprisingly, no rats tonight. Perhaps even vermin respect coronation. Still, you discover a keg of pitch leaking slow tears onto the flagstones. One errant ember later, and the castle could wake as a pyre. You and the recruit wedge a plank beneath, bind the stave with wet rags, and lug the keg to the damp rampart where rainwater pools. Crisis avoided, blood pressure maintained. 12th bell. Warwick calls muster in the torch yard. 20 bearers line up, tips unlit, points angled skyward like a forest waiting for the spark. The guard captain steps out, silvered helm under arm, and addresses you all. Tonight, you hold the first crown of the new reign, made of fire, not gold. Fail, and darkness will be the realm's first enemy. Her eyes flick to your bandaged ankle, then to the dragon torch in your grip. She nods as if to say, "You'll do." Lighting begins in the chapel, at the eternal candle said to have burned since the old king's coronation. A monk cups the tiny flame with gloved hands. You kneel, present the dragon's snout. The wick catches, blossoms into searing blue-white, then settles to a steady roar. The scent of rosemary floods your lungs, clearing cobwebs. You raise the dragon high. Everyone falls in behind. Processional choreography is a map you know better than your own thoughts. Spiral stairs up, gallery traverse, outer stair down, great hall sweep, then final march into the courtyard scaffolding where the crown platform waits. But maps cannot anticipate life. On the third turn of the spiral, the recruit behind you trips. His torch clatters, sparks skitter down steps toward a tapestry hanging too close to the banister. Without thinking, you shoulder the dragon to your left arm and dive, boot heel sliding on stone, hand stretching to snatch the falling torch mid-arc. It's heavier than you remember. The jolt wrenches your bruised ankle. Pain flashes white, but the torch is secure. The tapestry? A single ember lands on its fringe and dies with a sizzle, thread too damp from yesterday's storm. You exhale gratitude you'll never repeat aloud. The recruit whispers frantic apology. You wave him silent, focus first, chastise later. At gallery's end, Warwick catches your eye, offers a terse nod that feels like a medal. Across the hall, nobles rise from cushioned benches as your column snakes by. Light glints on new crown resting atop a black velvet pillow. Gold filigree shimmers but looks pale compared to the dragon's blaze. For a heartbeat, you understand power. Not jeweled circlets, but the hands that carry light so others may witness jewels. Courtyard at last. The platform, draped in deep blue, stands 10 feet high. Sconce rings encircle its columns, all waiting for the dragon fire. You mount the ladder. The crowd hushes. Up here, night air whips colder, trying to snuff your resolve. You raise the snout to the first ring. Flame leaps from resin throat to torch cup, igniting a crown of little suns around the dais. One by one, you pace the perimeter, seeding fire until the platform radiates like dawn imprisoned in iron. Drums roll, trumpets cry. The new king emerges in silver doublet, face ghostlit by your handiwork. Cheers ripple outward. You retreat down the ladder, knees jelly, dragon torch finally guttering as resin depletes. Warwick takes it, dunks the head in a bucket of brine, a hiss like a dragon's dying sigh. Ceremony proceeds, but duty remains. Patrol the outer circle to ensure no gust extinguishes a sconce. You walk slow, eyes flipping between flames and faces. Somewhere near the back, under a hood, stands the clerk. She meets your gaze, lifts a small lantern. Within, a single ink star floats on parchment, pierced so candlelight shines through like constellation. She tips the lantern in salute. You feel heat blossom behind ribs, a torch of another sort. Crown settles on royal brow. Crowd kneels, trumpets crescendo. And then, quiet. A hush so complete you hear the tiniest crack of pitch between torch fibers. In that silence, you sense transition. The night hands its fear to the fire. The fire hands wonder to the people. And you, anonymous as ash, broker the trade. When bells proclaim dawn, you're finally relieved. Warwick claps your shoulder. You kept the dark at bay. Now go chase sleep. The recruit thanks you. Even the guard captain offers half a smile. But your mind drifts to the loft, to straw that will itch, to dreams where comet tails and ink stars swirl. As you trudge up the barrack stairs, ankles aching, you consider tomorrow's duties, removing burned stumps, tallying spent resin, teaching newer recruits. The life of a torchbearer never sparks glory, yet it nourishes legends. Kings may bask, but only because you burned bright. At the loft door, you pause. Dawn slices in, soft and pink. You look at calloused palms, still faintly glowing with caught reflections. In the end, you realize you did not just survive the night. You lit it from within, turned exhaustion into ceremony, fear into focus, darkness into narrative. So, friend at the screen, if you endured every blistering moment with me through comet nights, rat bites, and dragon flames, let the comment section know you're still glowing. Hit like to add fuel. Subscribe to keep the torches ready. Share so more wanderers can find their way by our collective light. Until the next strange corner of history, may your wicks burn steady and your nights stay just dark enough for stories to shine.